Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, we're talking about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Blindspot as well as the latest episode of the Blacklist. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Blindspot, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of the Blacklist. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Blindspot. Crazy episode. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down bit by bit. First and foremost, obviously you still have Jane kind of dealing with the whole thing. I'm like, she's back and everything, but it's still kind of the thing of like, even though I'm back and I know Remy's never going to come back, the fact of the matter is I remember all these memories. Like, something will trigger and make her remember all these terrible things. That's actually kind of a sad thing, because it's like, it's kind of interesting because it's like, for such a long time she was racing to find out who she was, find her past, and now it's like, now that she's kind of got it, it's like she'd probably do anything to try and forget it again. But now I think she brought it up last episode with being like, the fact is now she finally feels whole, because what's for her, it's like she also wants to apologize to the entire team. And you know, you have Kurt being like, look at like Patterson and Rich, they've openly embraced you, but it's like, well, look at Zapata, is like, she came in with handcuffs and stuff like that. Why should I get special treatment? It's like, you get special treatment because, not necessarily even special treatment, Tasha made her choices. You didn't have a choice in the matter. It's like your condition led to you turning in the way you did. It's actually kind of interesting because Rich kind of points it out later on, kind of like, we can kind of think of Remy as kind of being a symptom of your zip poisoning. Think of her kind of as like a skin infection, or what was it, like diarrhea or something like that. And everyone's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And he's like, sorry about all that, kind of putting it like that. But really interesting thing is that this ties into the zip poisoning itself, in particular a pharmacy known as Pharmacy. It's the pharmaceuticals. Geez, that's the word I was looking for. The ones behind the zip poisoning. In particular, it was Dr. Roca, played by Patricia Richardson. The moment I saw her face, I was like, wait, is that? I was like, where do I recognize that face? It's the mom from Home Improvement. I was like, what? She looks great, dude. She looks like she hasn't changed at all. I'm just kind of pointing that out there. Like, holy crap. That was just kind of, I was like, what? Yeah. I was like, that's so dope. So that was interesting. But then it's kind of like, oh wait, that doctor's dead because people wanted her dead. Because it's like, she helped, her and her assistant found out like, oh, zip poisoning. Because initially it was kind of interesting because it was actually meant to help with, wasn't it, like PTSD, to help basically lock out certain memories so that people could get better and stuff like that, to kind of help with trauma like that. So I mean, obviously it started off with the best intention. That's always interesting because it never crossed my mind to think that zip started off like that. I mean, that's how most medications do. It's kind of a weird example to use, but even like Viagra and stuff like that did not turn into the, like, it was never originally meant to be the boner pill that it is. It was meant, wasn't it like originally like for heart conditions and stuff like that? It was something like that. It was meant for something else, and then people later on found out about the bonus effect of like, oh yeah, it's boner pills, and so they started marketing it like that. I don't even know if it gets marketed for the original thing that was supposed to help. Does it even help the thing it was originally supposed to help? I don't know. It just that was kind of a fascinating thing, and it just kind of seems like zip is like that. I think it's funny because I'm comparing zip to boner pills. Nevertheless, I don't think I've ever said the word boner that many times in my life, dude. That's crazy. But nevertheless, it seems like she's that Roca is dead, but they bring in her son Clay, and I love that Kurt's acting a little like, oh, you're lying to us. You know more than you're letting on, and then Jane is like, yo, slow the hell down. It's like, I love you. I love that fire about you, but you need to pull it back in because you're kind of scaring and terrifying him like that. But it turns out she faked her death because people were coming after her, because it's like the company knew about the side effects of Zip, and they still kept selling it. They kept trying to make her be like, no, we stopped selling it after we found out about it immediately. So glad you came to us about this. Tried to kill her and her assistant. It's actually kind of interesting because we end up finding this out later on. Roman's actually the one that actually helped her, which is so fascinating. And it's something that ended up rolling through my mind. I was like, well, Roman's going to try and cure himself, but is he going to try and cure Jane as well? It turns out later on it is the case. Like, he was trying to find more sales and stuff so that he could, because like, no matter what the situation is, no matter the difference that they had, knowing that he was dying from this illness, he was probably like, you know what, I need to save my sister too. Even if she's not Remy, she's still my sister through and through, so that was kind of sweet to know. It's actually kind of interesting because even Dr. Roca was like, oh yeah, me and Roman talked a lot, because it's like she couldn't be around her son, so it was kind of lonely. He actually helped her fake her death. He funded her research so that she could do what she needed to do. And it's kind of interesting because it also plays into that good nature side of Roman. I mean, to be fair, he was doing it for his own sake, but still, he didn't treat her like crap. He could have just been like, work, work, work. It's like, no, he gave her the room, even, you know, had conversations and stuff like that. So that was kind of actually sweet, you know, and because even Kurt talks about it too. It's like, you know, I'm sure because of Roman's upbringing and stuff like that, talking to you like that actually was kind of a good thing for him. So I also love the conversation where it's kind of like, oh, Jane's like, oh, I'm staying behind in the van, and Kurt's like, are you sure about it? She's like, you know, you want to stay here with Rich? And she's like, oh, I've suffered through worse. And then Patterson makes a wisecrack, and he's like, I'm really literally right here. And he's like, okay, but Kurt's like, I'm just glad to have my partner back, and walks away. And Jane's smiling and stuff in the van, and you have Rich being like, what are you smiling about? She's like, well, before he used to tell me always to stay in the car, now he wants me out of the car. And I'm like, that's so cute. And even Rich is like, oh, look at you two, so adorable. Because like, just seeing her giddy like that, it was just so adorable. Just like they're back together. It just feels like, I don't know, they have just like the cutest relationship and stuff like that. And her just being giddy about that was just kind of nice. But I like that Rich talked, it was kind of an interesting conversation between Rich and Jane, because it's the whole situation of like, she knows Remy's gone but would never come back, but like I said, worried about the memories. But Rich kind of talks about the fact that he's like, don't let the others know about this, but you guys kind of reformed me. Like, you know, it's like you spend enough time surrounded by good people, it helps you continue to be a good person. And it's like, I'm surrounded by all you guys, and it's just kind of, I forgot all the stuff that he was rambling on about, but it was like nice, sweet stuff to say about, like, you know, how he was kind of glad to be a part of the team and everything like that. And I even love him grabbing Jane and being like, Jane, you're 1,000% yourself. Now go out there and do good. And she immediately turned around and went out there and kind of helped save the day. So I thought that was pretty neat. It is sad that everything didn't work out. The moment Dr. Roca was like, yeah, these are the only ones, I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work out well. Yeah. And you can make the argument, it's like, kind of it's Clay's fault because he called his fiance to tell. I mean, to be fair, but it's like, you're so excited. You just found out your mom's still alive after all this time. And then, like, you know, especially in his case, because it's like his mom was his best friend and stuff like that. So, thought it was, you know, an accident. Now it's also, you found out, like, oh, someone's actually trying to kill her. Well, he didn't find out at that point in time, but, you know, so. But nevertheless. But it is nice that when it's all said and done, though, aside from the whole, like, zip cure that was literally being made, there's sadly, you know, I mean, it was still kind of a happy ending all around. Clay got reunited with his mom. Well, obviously, she got reunited with her son. And, you know, they're one step back, but also still one step closer because they know there's more of those sales out there somewhere. They just got to track them down. But at the very least, you know, Kurt and Jane, you know, they have each other. It's like, she's like, one thing is, I know that, you know, I can get back out in the field, because that was her biggest hesitation. I don't think it was, I thought it might have been like her condition, you know, the headaches and stuff, but it was like, no, because she kind of probably felt like she couldn't 100% trust herself. Even with everything saying like she was 100% Jane, I think there was some fear for her that was worried that, you know, maybe she would shift back into being Remy in some shape or form. But it's like, no, you're 100% you now. I mean, probably like the most 100% you that you could be. It's actually kind of interesting because I think that was another thing that Rich was talking about. The fact of the matter is that maybe given enough time, Remy could have actually went over to being a good guy. And she's like, I don't think so. Remy, you know, Jane was like, Remy was so angry. But it's like, yeah, surround yourself with good people. I mean, once again, it's like, that's the thing too. It's like, even though Remy was undercover and stuff like that, she still did good. She still helped people, even though she kind of had her own ulterior motives. And I mean, she could have probably failed a little more at what she did, but she succeeded. Whether that was just 100% for her cover, because I talked about it. Like, every once in a while, you got a glimpse of it seeming like Remy actually, like, a little bit of Jane shine through. It might not just been Jane in her. It was the good nature that was Alice, that little girl that was still inside of her before Shepard got to her. Maybe that kind of shone through a little bit in the cases of, you know, when I would point out and be like, oh, maybe that's a little bit of Jane coming out of Remy. Maybe it was just kind of Alice coming out, you know, but still, like I said, interesting how that all played out. Now, that in itself is just one side of things as we cover the other side with Tasha. Now, this was the big interesting thing. It's like, now, what the hell is up with Tasha? She's like, let me see Keaton. It's like, the moment she said, I'm like, so you are deep undercover with the CIA, and it turns out to be the case. But it's like, oh, no, Keaton's not going to help you. He's in a coma. And it's like, that actually sucks, too, because Keaton put her in that position. It's like, oh, dude, that's such a dick thing to do, especially in her case, because it's like every turn she wanted to go, let's bring in the team, let's bring in the team. Even the whole Madeline thing, Madeline literally killed Blake in the entire boardroom, and he's like, no, stay on the cover. It's like, you're such a dick for that. I mean, to be fair, Keaton had his moments of being cool, but also being a dick, and that was one of his dick moments. It's kind of like, you should have brought other people in on it. Like, it was, it makes sense, because Madeline's got reach everywhere, so, HDI Global's got reach everywhere. I mean, look at her. She was working for Crawford, so it's kind of like you kind of have to keep it hush-hush between certain people. But he still put Tasha in. I guess that's the whole point. It's like, hey, you know what you're getting into. You know that you would be leaving so much behind. So it also turns out Claudia didn't die. The moment she was like, oh, one of us decided to make it so that reveal themselves to save the other one. Like, I was like, because even Reed says it later on, it's like, oh, how'd you decide? Did you flip a coin? I was like, she's really, wow. I was like, she's that dedicated that she sacrificed. It's like, oh no, you faked it. I was like, oh, okay, that's really interesting. I even love, no, it's just a whole thing, because I like the narrative they make too, because it's like, MI6 is denying everything about Claudia. You're lying. And it's like, whoa. I was like, whoa, wait, is Tasha lying? Because everything she's saying seems like it lines up. I had thrown that out there, like she had to be super, super deep cover, or she was working for someone else. I didn't know what, like, I knew Tasha had reasoning for doing what she was doing, like, all the way through. But that was so interesting to me, because it's like, at that moment, I was like, oh crap. I did hesitate for a second. I was like, wait, is she lying? I mean, the thing about it is she's telling somewhat of the truth. Like, we already know about the Del Toro situation and stuff like that, but it's like, that's how you get away with lying. You keep it fairly close to the truth. You keep remnants of the truth in line, because that way you don't have to keep up with so many lies to a certain degree, because you're somewhat telling the truth. So I thought that might have been something she was doing. Turns out not to be the case. But Reed still trusted her anyway. Not necessarily trusted her, but it's like, hey, if you're telling the truth, you're the only one that's in a position to kind of get this done. And so for that, I am going to put you back in the field. But the fact of the matter is, what happened between you and me is done. Because at any point in time, all you had to do was come to me. It's that hard situation, because it's like, she was under orders. Like, she probably would have gotten in way more trouble if she had gotten you involved. But it's kind of like, we're not just a team, we're a family, especially between Reed and Tasha, because it's like, what's happening between us? You couldn't tell me about that. Like, no matter what Keaton said, it's like, after everything we've been through, it's not like, because it's not like we would have went blabbing. We would have had your back. We would have covered you. We would have helped you through everything. And Tasha did want to bring the team in, but he kept being like, no. And not, to be fair, that's kind of what he said. Like, he knew that ahead of time. He was being like, Keaton is what I'm saying, like, was kind of like, leave everything behind. Like, the fact of the matter is, you're going to burn every bridge doing what you're doing. And that's the point, like, to keep your deep cover and everything like that. So, but it's sad in the end. Claudia does ultimately call to reaffirm, being like, okay, so everything Tasha was in fact saying. Like I said, there was that little bit of doubt I had, but then when she was like, please let me go, I'm like, nah, she's got to be telling the truth. And I'm like, oh, Reed's not going to do it. I thought when he was like, no, I'm not going to believe you, I thought it was going to be like, we're going to do this together. I'm going to be your handler from now on, or something like that. I didn't know. I'm curious how much of the team actually knows, or did Reed keep that only to himself? I would assume he probably informed the others and was kind of like, yeah, we kind of got to keep this hush-hush. But the problem is, when Tasha went to go to the deal to meet Del Toro, the CIA is waiting, because they didn't want to believe this whole situation about Tasha. And now things are going to get bad, because Tasha was the only one that could get to Del Toro to kind of help mitigate this whole plan that, Madeline has, because it's like, we don't know. Because the whole thing isn't just about taking down Madeline, it's about taking down HDI Global, because it's like, because Keaton's whole thought process was, well, you took Crawford out of the picture, and then, some other psychopath is just going to take over. In that particular case, Madeline ended up taking over. It was supposed to be Blake, the person that they kind of put in position to do it, but that didn't work out. And it's like, even if they take her out, most likely someone else will just take her place. So the CIA is now screwing things up, because it's like 5:45, like she's supposed to be there by like 6 to meet up with Del Toro, but it's like, now this is going to interfere, like that's going to cause a whole complicated situation. Tasha is most likely going to get, probably, tortured and interrogated, most likely, and then the CIA is going to walk around with egg on their face when it turns out, because the lady was kind of like, oh, this is going to come out on, all fall on you, Reed, if it turns out not to be the case. Like, it sucks, because Reed told her everything, so that's why the CIA was able to grab her like they wanted to. I was kind of worried too because like she did say they had eyes everywhere. That was like in like, oh, maybe, you know, Madeline found out the truth or something like that. It turns out that be the case, but things are about to get interesting on that front because of that. I wonder, will Reed probably not even know that Tasha got caught? But to be fair, he might be keeping tabs on her, you know, to be like, contact me here and there. There's also the whole White's situation. I love, like, obviously this was all done without his know-how. And it's like, oh, what about the whole, like, Jane was like, what about me? Whites doesn't care. He just wants this whole situation wrapped up and kind of put behind us. Like I said, it's going to be interesting because this is going to be the first time that Jane and Whites under these new capacities will be kind of working with each other. That's kind of what I talked about last episode. So that's definitely going to be interesting. But I'm very interested to see where all of this takes us going forward in the next episode. What will be the ramifications with the CIA doing what they're doing? Will Tasha be able to convince them to kind of pull back? Like, you know, because she'd have to get in contact with, well, because like I said, the only person who knows the truth is Keaton, and if he don't come out of his coma or whatever, I mean, he'd have to miraculously come out of his coma to kind of, because he's the only one that knows the truth. So we'll see what ultimately goes down. But not just with that, you know, everything that's going on with Jane's cure, we're going to have to wait and see, you know, find those cells and everything and see what else is in store for us. Because it's actually interesting because now we're swinging back towards the whole HCI Global and Madeline thing is kind of the forefront of the storyline. So I guess like the FBI is going to go back to trying taking her down while the whole CIA thing is going to, they're doing their, well, Tasha in particular is doing her undercover thing. So I guess that's going to be their main focus going back. So like I said, I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us. And now moving on to this week's episode of The Blacklist. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode. Obviously, one big thing about this episode is it is Reddington's first day in the prison, and he's just kind of getting acquainted with his new circumstances. I love, he's like, oh, what's that smell? It's like, oh, it's the sewer line. He's like, could you, call facilities and come in here and say they can do, maintenance could do something about this, and just, that'd be so awesome if you could. Just him kind of being the polite man that he is. But then he meets up with Vontae, which that actor, I've seen him in so much, but I can't remember what. I think like the most recent thing I know he was in, there was like this Nickelodeon TV show where he was playing a football player, but there was something else I feel like I've seen him in, and I just don't remember what, and it's going to bug the hell out of me. I'll have to probably look it up later. But like, I've definitely seen that actor and stuff from time to time. But I love him, like, being Reddington's kind of right-hand man in the prison and everything. And then there's that guy that wants Reddington dead. I even love later on the conversation comes up about, he's like, let's put all bygones be bygones. Let's forget all about that terrible stuff that happened. And it's like, I didn't know that woman was your mother. And wanted to do sit beside, like, Bolsonaro was kind of like, without the grunt, obviously. But then he was like, there was a picture of me on her nightstand. And he was like, come on. In our defense, it was super dark and we were way too drunk. Super drunk. And the fact of the matter is, also, it was kind of like, a weekend I'd rather forget. He's like, don't tell your mom that. And it's like, Bolsonaro's just kind of like, it pissed him off even more. I love it. It's like, he even talked about it. He was like, Reddington's got a big mouth, and to me, that is Reddington's strongest suit. Is the fact is he has that big mouth. But to be fair, he can back it up. It makes you wonder, could he have really handled himself? I mean, he kind of got his ass kicked at first, but that's the thing about Reddington. He might not, be the toughest, swiftest dude, but the fact of the matter is he's got the pull and reach and the smarts and know how to do things. He caught the rat. He used the string and all of that. It kind of. I love that the note was like, yeah, contact this number, you'll get $10,000, which he did, which led to Denbei, sending messages back and forth with that rat. So it's like, oh, I'm assuming that's going to, well, I think the system's already set up so they don't really need the rat necessarily anymore. It would be nice if the rat could come, but it seems like you just pull on a string, like the strings are tied together now, so it's like it's kind of basically a pulley system on both sides. I don't think they need the rat anymore. It'd be pretty cool if they did still use the rat, just because it's like, oh, Reddington has a pal and stuff like that. But I love that whole situation. I also love that, like, Vontae's like, yo, oh, you need a pen? All right, you need it for a shiv. It's like, you're literally not using it to, get a shiv or whatever. I love when it was all said and done, Vontae was like, the fact of the matter is, you gave a damn about me when other people didn't, like my dad or anyone in here. So no matter what goes down, I've got your back, Mr. Reddington. I was like, no, you're so dope, dude. That's awesome, Vontae. It's kind of interesting. I'm going to talk about it in retro, all together and stuff like that. It should always be the case. But the connection isn't always clear. Like the names that Reddington gives him for blacklisters, the connections. Like in this episode, is another fact of the blacklister he sends them after is connected to something that will help him. Because basically it turns out Bolsonaro confessed to a crime he didn't commit. Well, because the pawnbrokers were caught, which I'll talk about that in a second, because of that, it led to them finding out, like, oh yeah, that guy isn't actually guilty of the crime he was actually being accused of, and there's actually someone out there who actually has a target on his back, and it's like, yeah, now they're going to come after you. And once again, that's kind of Reddington running his mouth, doing his thing and stuff like that, and the dude ends up getting released and ends up getting killed, and it's like, yo, contacting Dembe, being like, yo, thanks, tell Mr. Reddington we appreciate it, because now that whole situation, Bolsonaro got squared with, the other party in this situation. So I thought that was kind of nice. Reddington handling things his way, and it kind of works out in the end. What I also thought was kind of interesting, and it ties into it too, is like Liz was actually kind of scared, because Wrestler was like, nah, come on, fact is, Reddington's okay. Like, the fact of the matter is, he's probably got this judge paid off or whatever. But then Liz was like, no, he wasn't. He looked like, a way I'd never seen him before. And she ends up talking about it later on. It's like, yeah, he looked powerless. Because it's like, yeah, Reddington out in the open, yeah, he's got power, he's got position, he's got muscle to have his back. But when inside, he doesn't have any of that. Like, besides his reputation, it's not enough for survival in that environment, So, but I mean, now when everything kind of said and done, proving that he basically took care of a problem, by getting a dude released and didn't, inadvertently, well, not inadvertently, directly yet indirectly getting a dude killed, kind of shows you, yo, don't want to mess with Reddington. He even in this position, he's top dog for a reason, so it's actually kind of interesting, because Reddington made this line of like, it's like, he's like, no, it's okay. The fact of the matter is that I'd get caught 30 years later. He's like, the chances are I was going to get caught 3 years into this whole thing. So I went 27 years longer than I probably would have been expected to. And he's also like, at the end of the day, Liz, you had nothing to do with that. It's like, ooh, the moment he said that, I was like, whoo, yeah, how little you know, my friend, how little you know. So it is, once again, it's so ironic, because Liz is so worried about him and stuff like that. It's like, you put him in this position. So don't you think it's a little countered? Like, I guess you're allowed to feel guilty, because I guess she was just hoping it's like, no, he'll be put in a situation where he's okay and safe. Like, she doesn't, like, once again, Liz has really weird, conflicted emotions about this situation, because she cares about Reddington other moments, but other moments because at the end of the day, she wants the truth, but I think it's still, no matter what, she cares about him right now, no matter what the truth is, even though she knows, like, oh, he's not my dad. He's still someone that does good, and that he's still someone that she cares about, So I like that complex thing that she's kind of battling, in her, because that's been relevant the entire show. She's always had issues with Reddington, but she always comes back around because of who he is. The fact is, he always has her back. Like, he causes her a lot of problems, yet he brought a lot of good in her life in his own way. Kind of turns into a situation of constantly weighing the scales of whether he brought more good or harm to her life, So, but the fact is, she shows such concern for him is like that. It's just so interesting in that regard. But basically, it deals with pawnbrokers. That whole storyline ended up being interesting, because that NSA guy, well, he was working on a decryption that's behind this whole thing in this episode. It's like, you literally sold that. Even the pawnbrokers almost discussed it. Like, Delaney was kind of like, ew, you sold it to pay off a gambling debt? Even I'm like, really, dude? You literally gave away intelligence, because I guess for him, he thought it was a surefire thing. Like, I would assume that was enough to pay off his debt, but I guess the whole point was, like, to get enough money to also pay off his debt, while also, well, his gambling debt, while also paying off, the pawnbrokers as well with interest. Is kind of the whole point. He thought it was a surefire thing, and he ended up losing. He ended up going all in because he was that sure about it. All that devastating moment when it comes down to, you're like, yeah, you're about to celebrate, and then it's like, you lose, and it's like, ooh, that crushing look. That's kind of sad. Also sucks too that Delaney ended up killing him. Makes you wonder, did they always have that plan to kill him, or was it just kind of like oh, you're trying to renegotiate with us, now we're going to kill you? Like, it's kind of hard to say in that regard. It's kind of interesting how they work too. It's like, we give you 30 days. I mean, they have some form of honor, because it's like, okay, you got 30 days to pay off your debt. If you don't, we're going to sell what you gave to us as collateral to someone else. It's like, that's kind of an interesting system. They actually even talked about, Delaney was talking about the fact that her and Rod kind of actually, they bought this business together. They didn't know how to really run a business. They almost lost it, but then they kind of, they needed to take riskier things when it came to collateral. And so that's why they kind of got into the criminal business that they did, which was kind of interesting. What I also thought was kind of interesting, there was that lady, the NSA lady, that was like, oh, like the moment she said that, and I love that Haram quickly jumped on it. It's like, oh, we shouldn't have sent Samara. It's like, why not? Because she's Mossad. Like, her loyalties will be divided. And it's like, her loyalties aren't divided. She's like, we'll see. And Haram's like, no, we won't. We've already seen that her loyalties aren't divided. So it's kind of interesting because it's like, I was about to make a comparison to NCIS in that regard, just because of the Ziva situation. Just the fact is, because I feel like it came up a little bit with Ziva, but I feel like even with like Samara and all the time she's been a part of the task force, her ties to Mossad don't come up that often. She's kind of more, she's more of a liaison in this regard, but still, I don't know. Like, is that even really technically her title, even as a liaison? I'm not sure. Nevertheless, I'm going off of a huge tangent in that regard, but I love that. And the moment that happened and the lady was walking away with the phone, and then like the people later on showed up to steal the device, I'm like, she obviously did it. She's behind it. It was like, and then I was like, kind of ironic her talking about, Samara's divided loyalty, because it turns out she was actually working with the Chinese in that regard too, because she was an informant. And it's like, oh, you looked at this drive, this decrypting code. Like, the fact of the matter is, it kind of poisons everything you did from now on. But Cooper's like, you need to shut your mouth, right? The less you say, probably the better in your case. So, what was interesting about this whole regard too was the fact is that I'm surprised it didn't come up in conversation. Part of me was wondering, just in the back of my mind, like Delaney is talking about her and Rod and stuff like that, their marriage and stuff like that. Hasn't really come up in conversation though, Haram and her getting engaged and stuff like that. Like, they haven't really made much of a point about that. Like, it was such a big thing last season, because it literally was one of the big things in season 5's finale, just because it's kind of like, hey, Samara woke up and she's like, oh yeah, hell yeah, let's get married. So it's kind of like, hey, but we haven't really gotten to that. Once again, it's like Aram and Samara really haven't had their moments, a little bit here and there, but last episode, but not to the extent you would think they'd have. But maybe that's something they're kind of like dishing out later on in the season. Nevertheless, I was worried, like, the moment, because I was like, no one knows about her condition and stuff like that. I thought she had, like, some common or something like that, because I was thinking, like, what was going to happen is, like, while she's on a cover, like, she struggles to find the words, like, she kind of, like, her condition kind of kicking in. But it never came up, and I was like, oh, because I was so certain, but it did. But then when they brought it up later on, like, oh, she doesn't have a wire or something, it's like, oh, so I guess it's not a concern. But I still thought, like, maybe that's going to happen. It does come up, but not in the form I thought it would, because basically she tries to call 911, but ends up calling 119. She does it twice, and it's like, I was like, what's going on? And it's like, oh man. So, and once again, kind of showing that things are getting worse, to the point she actually looks it up later on to see, like, looking into aphasia, and she kind of believes that she has it. So that was that's kind of interesting, because like I said, they're pushing that more and more. Like, it came up last episode, and now it's coming up again. So that's probably going to be something we see more and more frequent, to the point it will start interfering with her work. So I'm curious to see what ends up going down in that route, Yeah, she kind of feel bad too, because even Wrestler was kind of like, yeah, I don't. She's like, Samara's like, so why are you out here? He's like, yeah, I'm trying to figure out a way how to tell that dude that his wife died. It's like, even though he's a criminal, it's like, it's still kind of rough to kind of break that news to him, because they have been criminal partners for so long and stuff like that, So, I mean, even before they became criminals and stuff like that, but still. I was just thinking about it too. I also love that Reddington had told that story. What was that dude's name? The Collins dude, the story about, like, him exploring Kentucky and stuff like that, and then Red being like, yeah, he got stuck in like a cavern and stuff like that, but he lit a match to a candle that used to smoke to find his way out, and then, like, Vontae goes like, oh yeah, go little Collins or whatever in that regard, and he's like, oh no, that dude died. Oh yeah, he dehydration, starvation, stuff like that. He was exposed, to the elements and stuff like that. I mean, he was in the cave for 14 days. It's kind of like, man, that's just that. I was like, that was a quick turnaround of being depressing, because it's like, oh yeah, here's this kind of, it's like invigorating story of like, oh yeah, and then it's kind of like, oh no, that story has a shitty ending. I thought that was kind of fascinating how that ended up playing out like that, because even Vontae was just like kind of defeated after hearing that story. But like I said, it worked out in the end. So. Also, a big thing that went down this episode is like, hey, so what are we going to do about this whole drive situation? Well, I got a guy who's going to look into it, and it's like, oh, we can get it. Liz goes, and it's kind of like, oh, no, it's not, we can't do anything about it. And Jennifer was upset about it. You know, Liz is kind of like, hey, he won, but she's like, you could just accept that for her. It's like, no, but I'm not going to let this whole thing about Reddington control and dictate my life. The fact of the matter, she's like, I did gain something good out of it. We found each other. I'm like, oh, that's sweet. And then immediately Jennifer kind of shits on it a little bit by being like, yeah, but that's not enough for me. I'm like, oh, like I said, it was kind of like, oh, that's sweet. Oh, never mind. Completely shit on that special moment. I get it's just a thing for her, because for Jennifer, it's like, this is the truth that's connected to her dad. Like, everything, you know, because it's like, you know, for one, obviously she saw Reddington, thought that was her dad for real, and, you know, hasn't seen him in years. So him disappearing and from her life, it would make more sense now, rather than him going off becoming this traitor, criminal, big time bad guy. Understand that he's going, like, trying to find out the truth about what happened to the men that she loved, the dad that was one man one day ending a different man the next 30 years, you know. So it's understandable from that point, because this holds so much weight for her. So it's kind of understandable being like, yeah, you can understand why she feels the way she does. Like, this isn't enough, so she has to find out the truth. But basically, at the end, it does seem like they have narrowed down like a specific date and time of roughly around the surgeries and stuff like that. So all they have to do is look into some records around some surgeries that happened around that time. There's one particular dude they found out about, so it's like we're going to look into finding out who he is, and this might lead to us finding out who Reddington really is. So, quite an interesting episode. I'm very interested to see where all of this takes us going into the next episode, especially the Liz and Jennifer situation, like what they end up discovering, but also some Mars situation, what things kind of lead in that direction, while also Reddington in jail, like as he continues to kind of be the kingpin dude that he always is and always has been. It's like, yeah, of course Reddington's going to thrive in certain conditions and stuff like that. So it's going to be very interesting to see where all that's headed. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.